G'day. Today I'm going to build a simple MIDI instrument. It's a kid's toy drum. There's half a dozen different sounds on it. I'm going to build a pack for decent sampler, and I'll bundle that up and provide a download link for those that might want to have a look and have a bit of a play. I'm Mark Lowry. I'm a musician and audio engineer, and I run a home studio. So this little kid's toy has a couple of little drums, there's a little cymbal, there's a xylophone with 7, I think, notes in it. And there's two little wood block things and this thing. So when you're building a MIDI instrument pack, there's a couple of different things you need to think about before you get started. Do you need multiple velocity layers? Now, a velocity layer is a series of hits or notes at a constant volume. Now, you might want to have a quieter set of those notes or a really loud set, which can give you a bit more variety in what your instrument can do. For what I'm doing today, it's a fairly simple little instrument. I'm not going to bother with getting too deep into that. I'm just going to do one velocity layer. So all of my hits will be the same, aiming for the same level. The other thing I think about before I start is round robins. And a round robin is where you can configure your MIDI instrument to play either a random selection of notes, or you can order it so it can play 1, 2, 3, 4 of your notes. The idea being that when you play that note on your keyboard, it comes up with a random selection of 3, 4, however many you've created. And the overall intent of that is to give you a bit more variation, a bit more of a human feel to the sound of the instrument. I try and do that for almost everything I do in these MIDI packs, because it does make it feel a little bit more real rather than just a static snare drum, electric snare drum hit that's the same every time. So I'll do 3 or 4 round robins for each of these components. You also want to try and capture them as well as you can. So I'm using a really good mic, one of my better mics. I'm using my OPR U87 large condenser. I'm running that through Unison Neve preamp. Now, I probably won't do any EQ on the way in other than a high pass filter, just to take a bit of the bottom end off. Then once I've recorded it, I'll go into Pro Tools and edit each of the individual notes, hits, whatever you want to call them, to a standard length, make sure the volumes are consistent, and got fades at the start and finish of each of them, so we don't get unnecessary pops and clicks. Yeah, so let's get into it. Okay, so now that we've got our recording done, we have to select the individual sounds that we want to pick for our MIDI player, our MIDI file. Now I've recorded in this instance, I've recorded 8 hits on one of the drums. So I now need to pick my 4 preferred hits to take into my final edit. So the first thing I do is duplicate that into an edit section. So I retain the original version of the file. Now let's run through those 8 hits. Now those two there, they were pretty good volume, but you might hear there's a bit of a double hit with the mallet or the stick. So I won't use those two. I'll use that one. That guy was pretty good. So not those ones. I think this guy was pretty good, and the one after it. He's a bit quieter, but he will do. So I'll use that one and that one. And then mute that one and mute that one. And then take those selections to a final listing of preferred sounds. So that one. I mean, this is in Pro Tools. Your DAW might have a different way of doing this. As you can see, I'm struggling myself. Just going to select those, move them up into my final selection. As you can see, I've already made a start on this. I picked my 4 from the other drum kit, and the other drum, then this one. Now they're not all exactly the same, but I don't want them to be exactly the same. Now I've still got all these other noises to work through. So I've got my cymbals. Oh, that's the wood blocks, and then the cymbal, then the individual xylophone, and I re-recorded the other thing because it was too low. But yeah, so I'll go through and edit all of those up, and we'll come back again. Okay, I've selected my 4 samples for each instrument. I've separated them into separate audio tracks because I'm going to treat them a little bit differently. Some are a bit louder than others. And then record those back into Pro Tools to embed the effects that I've applied. So for example, on this first drum, I've added in a high-pass filter to 100 Hertz and just adjusting, just bringing the levels up. I am for about -6 dB. You don't want it to be too loud. If you've got multiple things happening, you're hitting multiple instruments, you don't want them to be getting louder and louder and louder in an uncontrollable way. So -6 dB means that you've got a good starting point, to my mind. And I'll adjust that for each of the audio tracks for the other instruments as I'm going. And then what I do is record that. Just record those 4 samples again. Okay, so that's embedded the new level into the audio. What I need to do now is break them up into their 4 samples, but make them a consistent size. So I'll use the grid in Pro Tools to ensure they're all of a consistent file size and length. And then I put a fade on the end. Because it's a simple drum hit, there's not a lot of tail, so these could arguably be a bit shorter, but I'm going to leave them at that length, but then make them consistently at that length and make sure there's no unwanted additional noise in there. 2, 3, so that's the 4 sound files. Now I rename them. So in Pro Tools, that's Command-Shift-R, and I rename those to reflect what the sample sound is and the number of the sample. So it's sample number 1. Copy that text. Actually, I can copy that text, can't I? Control Tab. Of course, I've got to, first things first, I've got to embed the fade, which is Option Shift 3 in Pro Tools. Then do the renaming. So then your Control Tab highlights your region. Rename it again, and that'll be 2. And 3. Four. So now I've got 4 separate files. A little bit different, but fairly constant in volume. I just want to check. Yes, there is a bit of a noise in that one that I heard earlier. So I just clean that up. Must have been me doing something. It's very quiet. If I just bring that back and then redo the whole file length. So those 4 are now export as new files. Put them in a new folder called samples, export. And I now go through that process, record each of those files through processing, bringing the levels, making the levels constant, bit of EQ or whatever is required, across each of these additional tracks, and then do the same editing process. And once I've done all that, I'll come back again. Okay, so now I've exported all of those files, and we've got 52 sample files from our little child's drum kit. So we've got our samples ready to go. So the next step is to actually build the decent sample pack, which I'll start as a separate video. I think this one's long enough as it is, but I'll put the finished pack up with both videos so you can have a look at it, have a play with it if that's what you choose to do. Coolo. Hope you got something out of that. Let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. And hope to see you another time. Thanks.